Hey everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. I am your host, Blake Morgan. Today I am chatting with Bibie Wu. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of Monte Foods. She joined the company in 2018 and she has over 20 years of CPG marketing leadership experience with many well-known and respected brands at General Mills and Campbell's and laundry and home care at Henkel. In this episode, we are talking about the pandemic and how it increased product and value innovations and brand purpose for the brand. We are talking about reinvigorating a 135-year-old brand and how she defines good leadership in today's rapidly changing world and how this brand continues to push the envelope to reach new consumers. Please enjoy Bibie Wu. Bibie, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast all the way from the Bay Area. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today. Delighted to talk to you today, Blake.
Well, I just love the opportunity to talk to folks in the consumer packaged goods industry because it's such a unique industry. And at Del Monte, Del Monte's a very old company that just has been around, and it's just such an iconic company. So could you just talk about a little bit for our audience that don't know you, how you came into this new role at Del Monte, and a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So Del Monte Foods, you're right. It has been a company that's been well known and around and revered for over 135 years. But I would say that we like to think of ourselves as a startup company in that we really feel like we're at an inflection right now and transforming the company so that we stay relevant to the new consumer and today's families. And if you think about Del Monte and what everyone loves about it and knows about it, it's grounded in the goodness of fruits and vegetables. And that could not be more important and timely today while everyone's trying to eat better and manage their household budget and put great food on the table. And we need to continually innovate to be able to meet those needs. So my role here at Del Monte is the Chief Marketing Officer. And in that role, I'm responsible not only for the marketing side of things and building the brand, but also I have responsibility for the research and development department. So really working with them to bring out new innovation, new packaging, new products that's going to delight the consumer.
Yeah, food is just a constantly changing industry. There's so many fads. And if you think about like the 80s and 90s, I mean, it's very clear what the fads were then, fat-free and eat margarine, not butter. And recently now it's all about butter, drink butter in your coffee. Like there's actual trends with food. So could you just talk about how you stay on top of what the consumer actually wants and not just the marketing trends around what kind of food you should be creating and selling?
Yeah, for sure. So, part of my team is our consumer insights team. And that group, including everyone in my department, really, if you're a marketer or a food developer, but especially the consumer insights team, has their ear to the ground to understand what consumers are wanting and how they're behaving, what they're shopping for, how they're cooking. And, you talk about all these trends and, it's interesting because there's one thing that hasn't gone out of style, which is the desire to eat healthier, right? And the backbone of that these days, especially, seems to be wanting to eat more fruits and vegetables, right? If you think about consumers, I think over 2/3 of adults are saying that they want to incorporate more fruits and vegetables into their diet. But it's something that's a little bit more difficult for consumers to either want to do or know how to do. So we like to think of ourselves as the original plant-based food company. I always joke that we were doing plant-based before it was even cool.
Right.
And you think about all the plant-based food options out there and plant-based diets, and even flexitarian diets where people who eat meat are consciously trying to include more fruits and vegetables in their diets. That's really within our wheelhouse, and we're well positioned to take advantage of those trends.
Okay, so for our audience that live under a rock and don't know Del Monte or aren't familiar, could you just talk about the brands and the types of products that you sell?
Yeah. So I think when people think about Del Monte Foods, they think about our iconic products like our canned green beans that are in, everyone's Thanksgiving green bean casserole, or our canned peaches that is in their favorite peach cobbler, that maybe their mom or their grandmother used to make. And that's certainly our core business, but we've expanded into so many other things too. So within the Del Monte brand, we certainly have those items, but we also have, for example, the fruit cup snacks that kids love to put into their lunch boxes and bring a cup of fruit to school as a snack. As well as one of the big things that we've been doing is what we call thinking outside of the can and really innovating to get us into new packaging formats, new temperature states like refrigerated and frozen, new categories. And we're doing all of that, not only with the Del Monte brand, but also other brands. So within Del Monte Foods Inc., we also have brands like Contadina, which is a wonderful canned tomato brand. And we've launched new brands like Joyba into the ready-to-drink tea market. So it's really exciting times, and we're firing on all cylinders.
Since you are so tapped into consumer insights around food, and you and your group are constantly doing research on figuring out what are people eating now, so much has changed post-COVID and how people eat and cook and what their preferences are. Could you just talk about some of the trends that are happening now? I mean, you mentioned plant-based and people eating more fruit and vegetables, but could you talk about any of the other insights that are impacting the food industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're all familiar with, with the pandemic and, not too long ago, the shutdown. Obviously, people have been eating and cooking a whole lot more at home. And so what we found is that they need cooking hacks. They need inspiration. They want you to be able to help them create wonderful meals, but easier and add a value. So one of the things that we've seen over the last, 18, 24 months is the growth in segments that we call flavor and meal enhancers. So for example, I mentioned a brand like Contadina, which is canned tomato, which is really the heart of all these wonderful meals that people like to make at home, like lasagna and pasta dishes and other types of kind of like, comfort food. So there's been a real growth in the canned tomato category. There's also been a real growth in cooking aids and starters like the broth and stock category. The base of stews and soups, and we have a brand called Collagen, which is the number one broth brand in the Northeast. And then most recently, we made an acquisition of the leading stock brand, which is Kitchen Basics. So we've seen a lot of growth in that category as well.
Absolutely. I love that. And just thinking of all the amazing meals you can cook with any kind of tomato, chunky tomatoes, diced tomato. It feels like every recipe, especially like a brisket, or it's making me hungry, like a stew. Yeah, you need that bouillon, that broth, and you need that those tomatoes. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's switch gears and start talking customer experience shop a bit. That's why my listeners tune in. They're so
Yes.
curious about how a CMO like yourself would even begin to think about customer experience and if you own it and what it looks like. So let's just step back and start peeling back the layers of customer experience. Can you just talk about how you are connected to it if you own it and what it looks like at Del Monte?
Yeah, and actually I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is as the chief marketing officer, I actually have responsibility not only for the marketing side, which people think of traditional CPG like, okay, of course you've got the consumer insights organization and you've got the brand marketers and the brand innovators and you've got the omni-channel and marketing activation. But in addition, I have the responsibility for our research and development organization. And we did that very deliberately because if you think about the customer experience or the consumer experience, we really kind of own that soup to nuts, right? So like identifying what are those consumer trends, macro and micro, what are consumers wanting? What do they not even know and how to articulate what their wants and needs are? That's in my shop. Then concepting and figuring out ways to address that, whether it's a marketing program or new product innovation. And then working with the research and development department to quickly iterate on prototypes, testing them out, refining them, and then ultimately bringing them to market with a strong launch plan and getting the word out there and then really understanding how consumers are liking it and how do we get them to repeat and generate that loyalty. So what's super exciting about my role is I have all of those things, kind of soup to nuts.
Yeah, and I could imagine there's so many things that impact your sale to the customer, whether it's the product placement in the store or trends. So how do you ensure that the customer is having the experience you want them to have while you are somewhat disconnected at times from the actual transaction? Because they don't go to a Del Monte store and buy your product.
Yeah. So I think that actually gets into another trend and distinction that's worth talking about. So, you use the language customer a lot, and we certainly do too. But in our world, we talk about both the consumer and the customer, right? So the consumer is the person who actually, cooks and then eats our wonderful contadina tomatoes in their lasagna at the end of the day. The customer is the retailers that we work with, right? So whether it's a Walmart or a Kroger or a Costco, they're both really important to us. And as you talk about, like, how do you manage that relationship so that at the end of the day, the consumer experience is really good? We have to do that, not only trying to do that directly with the consumer, but also really working through our retail customer. Because I'm sure, as you know, and the other folks you've talked to on your show have talked about, is, there's really been a rise in power, right, with the retailer, the customer. Not only do they have the access to those shoppers who are going through their stores, but they have become their own retailer media networks in their own right. They're monetizing and they're selling their data, which is incredibly valuable to us. And we have to access the shoppers, our consumers, many times through their retail networks, their media networks. So we really try to not only, of course, all the regular stuff, get a great campaign, make sure you're out there in all the channels that your consumers directly interacting with, but then also very much working through these retailers to mine that data and then serve up the right messages in their ecosphere, which is very important these days.
Yeah, it seems like now with even just shopping online for groceries, there is so much you can do. Let's say you're shopping for something on Walmart, you're shopping for groceries, the way that that product is displayed on the app matters a lot. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's definitely one part of it, and that's certainly super important from an e-commerce perspective. And whether that's e-commerce is a ship direct to the consumer, or more and more, right? These retailers like a Walmart, it's very much about like pickup. So you make the transaction online, but then they ultimately pick up in store. But beyond even that, I think even the in-store experience and the consumer who just is shopping the traditional way, retailers more and more are, a critical partner in terms of just getting access to that consumer, whether it's because you want to work with them on programs to, get signage and messaging inside the store, or you want to access their shopper card data so that you're serving up the right messages and promotions to the correct shopper right when they're in that right mindset.
So, Bibie, the people that are listening, I mean, being a CMO of a company like you are, I mean, it's such a privilege and it's so rare to get that opportunity. A lot of people would love to be a CMO. What advice do you have for those who are on the track? They want to be at the C level. They want to own customer experience. Do you have any advice for them just in their own careers on how to be a CMO or CCO?
Wow, that is a really big question. When I think about myself and as a marketer and a CMO, first and foremost, I feel like I've always picked opportunities where there's been a really strong brand story, but really needs the help of some expertise to, I would say, like, dust off that brand story, put a more contemporary spin on that brand story. Like, ask yourself, where are those opportunities where I can take an inherent strong narrative and strong brand DNA, but infuse it with new thinking, fresh thinking, a new approach so that you can market it more relevantly in today's environment. So that's kind of like why I've always picked the companies and brands that I've chosen to work with. And like with Del Monte, right, that was exactly the story. So you have this wonderful equity that maybe about 5 or 6 years ago when I joined, felt like it could be brought into the new millennium with more modern marketing and some product innovation and get it to new consumers, new channels, new packaging formats. I think that's been a really big part of like why I've chosen to go where I've gone. And then I think, looking for those opportunities where it's not just about being a marketer, it's really about being a general manager. And I talk about this with my teams all the time, right? You're not here just to think about the latest advertising tagline or make sure that we're casting the right way in the latest online video. You're really here to build that brand equity for the long term and to very much manage top line growth and bottom line growth. And at the end of the day, it's really about that total commercial strategy that you're trying to generate and really make successful in market.
Yeah, absolutely. So could you give us just some examples for those that are really at the beginning? Like when you say top line and bottom line growth, what do you mean?
Yeah, so it's all about, generating the sales and having the right go-to-market strategy where you're pricing your products the right way so that you can, generate the demand, but then also generate the bottom line profits that you need. So, we talk about kind of like the triple threat, or like the three main KPIs. You want to grow your market share, right? You want to make sure that you deliver your profitability, and you want to always generate growth year over year. So I think many times people might think that marketing is, like I said, just about the marketing campaign or the execution and all the fun, flashy stuff you do working with your agencies. But at the end of the day, it really is about having a business that is growing and profitable, backed by a strong brand equity that's going to be here for a really long time.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So when we think about marketing today, I mean, what is new and different about marketing today? You mentioned that your customers are your customers are empowered. I'm not used to this kind of language, but your customer, the
retailer.
Yes, the retailer that sells your product, they are your customer. And just, how do we have to think differently about marketing today? And just in a completely changed world, thanks to digital, thanks to social, thanks to changing buyer behavior.
Yeah. So for sure, that trend that I was just talking about, the rise of power of the retailer and how much access and information they have to their shopper, who is ultimately your end consumer. The other thing that is really prevalent in our plans and the way we think is, how do you leverage then, kind of on the completely opposite side, those micro influencers, those influencers, right? Who are your consumers? But are becoming more and more important to shoppers, because that's where they get their ideas from, their inspiration. They're trusting their advice. And of course, we know that those influencers have gotten really savvy. And I think it's especially important when you think about, the consumers of today and tomorrow, right? So if you think about like Gen Z, and I read a statistic the other day that like 77% of Gen Zers are actually making their shopping choices largely because of influencers and platforms like TikTok and what have you. So that's something that we're really oriented around. And as I talk about the importance of making sure that Del Monte, that brand, kind of goes into the new millennium, we're very mindful of that. And so we've been deploying lots of strategies and tactics, working with influencers, ranging from, for example, we have an exciting new brand called Joyba, which is the first to retail with a ready-to-drink boba tea, with that true boba shop experience with the straw that you punch in. It's all about appealing to the Gen Z market. It's been a runaway success. And, we have been working with influencers to get the message out there. Sometimes we don't even have to lift a finger, because it's so viral. They've picked up on it themselves. For example, when we just did a small in-market test of Joyba, it was immediately picked up on TikTok, and they talked about going to their local Costco and finding it there, and got 8 million views right off the bat. So that's a really important trend that we try to stay on top of, and really make sure that we're identifying the right influencers to leverage their platforms and leverage their content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to be honest, TikTok is a world that I just don't even dabble in. I just find it overwhelming. So, I mean, what advice do you have for people like me that are just, we aren't tuned into these new social networks? I mean, is it about just hiring young people that are into it, or did you hire an agency? How did you do it? How did you crack TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you got to be your consumer as well. So I think absolutely, as a marketer and what you expect of the team, you got to be facile with those latest trends and those platforms and those apps. And then for sure, we do work with a variety of agencies, and we lean on them for expertise. But one of the things I found is that the consumer behavior and trends are moving so quickly. Sometimes the agencies are learning along with us, right? So when I talk about the rise of retailer media networks, we very much found that wow, our media agencies are really learning along with us. And so as a CMO, it becomes an interesting question, because you're thinking, well, should I bring some of that in-house? Because I don't want a paid agency to learn on my dime, right? So we've made some choices there about what do we have agencies do versus where do we want to kind of staff up our internal expertise, so that we're always ahead of those trends.
Yeah, I mean, trends are moving so quickly that, yeah, I mean, the agencies probably are just learning as fast as everyone else because we're all learning on the fly.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like how modern life is today. You really don't know what's coming tomorrow. Everyone is saying, oh, yes, there's so much more uncertainty out in the world. So, as a leader, when we're living in an uncertain world where we can't see around corners, how do we lead when we don't know what will work? We don't know what is happening tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you're right. There seems to be so much more uncertainty than we've ever felt before, right? Whether it's in like the geopolitical environment, the economic environment right now, and then also the workplace, right? Just think about like how much it's, the last couple of years have shook up the workplace. And, right now I'm broadcasting from, my house. And at Del Monte, we are a hybrid environment, but all these things have just been really different. I think one thing, though, that we've noticed is that in times of uncertainty, consumers and just we ourselves and our employee base really get a lot of comfort from staying with tried and true, trusted companies, values, principles, brands, right? So we at Del Monte, we've always had a very strong core mission about leveraging the inherent goodness of fruits and vegetables to make people's lives better and to nourish lives. And I think it's interesting because the last couple of years, maybe because there's been so much uncertainty, consumers, and especially with the younger consumers, the importance of like purpose and value has become even more important as a touchstone, right? Like give me some sanity when there's all this going around. And so we've really, really bumped up our visibility and just kind of like making sure that our core purpose is a more overt expression. So, we talk about basically growing a healthier and more hopeful tomorrow by responsibly making nutritious foods accessible to all. And, in a time of uncertainty, I think we go back to that purpose more and more. And so like, it's becoming more evident in my external marketing campaigns where we have a Del Monte master brand campaign that really talks about that. We've really amped up our corporate social responsibility commitments around that rallying cry. And then if you think about like just with my team and how do I lead my team, like I truly do believe that the strongest teams and the most successful teams really live your mission. And so that's something that we leverage in our own recruiting. And as we think about developing our people internally, this idea of really nourishing lives has become more and more prominent.
I love that. And again, it goes back to you kind of trying to do not a new face on this older brand, but really, yeah, trying to bring an older brand up to what's happening today and to modern life. And I think a lot of leaders are struggling with this new world, this new environment, being leaders in so much uncertainty. But now that we've talked about your role, I think it's time for us to get to know you a little bit better on a personal level. Are you game for some rapid fire questions?
Sure. Let it rip.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Bibie. Ready? All right.
Yeah.
First question. What does your morning routine look like?
Wow. I am not a morning person. So on the days when I'm working from home, I will get up maybe about 15 minutes before my first meeting and brush the cobwebs out of my hair and get ready to jump onto a Microsoft Teams meeting. So I am very much a fly by the seat of the pants in the morning, and then I get kind of more like in front of it and structured as the day goes by, and I drink more and more of my caffeinated tea.
All right. Do you have a leadership hack that helped get you to where you are today?
Like I said earlier, I think really following my passion for brands and making a difference in the lives of families. And I think also just, having a couple of mentors that have been really critical to my career. And I think about a mentor that I have from Campbell's Soup, and I think about the mentor that I have from Sun Products, which is a laundry and home care company. And those are people that I still continue to stay in touch with. The value of mentorship is, it's invaluable.
Agreed. What do you do to relax at the end of a hectic day?
I'm a multi-sport person, so I love to mountain bike. I also climb, so whether it's, sport climbing on a rope and a belay or bouldering, I love to do those things. I find that as I get older, running becomes harder and harder, and I have a more difficult time doing that back to back, but just releasing it through the adrenaline of multi-sports.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, rock climbing is so challenging, but so exciting.
Yeah.
What is your favorite leadership book or resource?
I was dusting off my bookshelf the other day and I came across a book called like the 100-Day Action Plan. I think I bought it for the last company before this one I started. And what I enjoyed about that was it emphasized the importance of, your first 100 days and really making sure that you have a strong point of view, kind of like, this is what I stand for, and this is why I'm here, because I think the opportunity is this for the business, and then breaking it down into an actionable kind of like 30, 60, 100-day plan. That was really meaningful to me.
Love that. What is your favorite type of vacation?
I think one that has a lot of outdoor activity. So I don't like to sit around and just shop trinkets and eat a lot of buffets at the Golden Corral, but I really like to do a lot of outdoor sports. So maybe something. I spend a lot of time in Tahoe in this area and do a lot of outdoor sports.
If you could have lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh my goodness! Wow. I I would love to have lunch with Michelle Obama. I think she is just a paragon of a strong woman, and being in kind of like the health and wellness and good food for you industry, I think she's made a really big difference in terms of like imparting the importance of healthy lifestyles.
And lastly, if you had to describe your outlook in one quick motto, what would it be?
I would say positive intent.
Great.
I really do believe that if you approach your day, people, interactions with positive intent, you're going to have a much better day and you're going to be a happier person.
I love that. Well, Bibie, this has been so fun. Thank you for joining me. And where can people find more about Del Monte Foods?
I would go to Del Monte Foods online. We have a corporate website there that can talk about all of our products and their benefits. And then check out all of our social media handles as well. So for that brand and some of our new exciting brands, like I mentioned, Joyba Bubble Tea.
And TikTok, right?
And TikTok.
They can find you on TikTok. Perfect.
Exactly.
Well, everybody, you have been tuning in to The Modern Customer. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.